Thank you, John. Look, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Last time I was talking to a Graham Centre Beef Day, I was talking about internal parasites of beef, and we can always talk about that later. But again, it's great to be here, and it's a wonderful time to be in the beef industry, I've got to say. In fact, although my talk is on research, development and adoption, I can't avoid the opportunity to talk a little bit about prices, which I will for a moment at the beginning here. And so not only a great time for prices, but it's been raining in Waggatoo, I've noticed, and around. And the drought seems to have perhaps broken in Queensland as well. So things are looking good. So maybe the talk should be back to internal parasites, and bloat may in fact be more useful than what I'm talking about today. Still, it was great to go out to dinner last night, and at the Duke of Kent Hotel I saw this little sign that I took a photograph of. So if everybody in the place knows now that beef and lamb prices have gone up, and we're starting to feel it at the restaurant just last night. So if you want to pay more for your beef, go to the Duke of Kent Hotel. So look, I will talk a little bit about prices very briefly at the start, and then move on to really get onto the MLA story and also around research. So I've just got this slide in at the beginning, and I was at a cattle sale in Alice Springs last week, and a pen of Herefords went to $3.68 a kilo, which was a record for there. And carcass weight prices are starting to push $8. In fact, at Alice Springs, somebody in the crowd said, I don't think they were really well connected with the industry, but they said, it's the first time you've got to pay more for a kilo of beef in Alice Springs than you do for a cappuccino. That is beef in a live animal at $3.68, but actually cappuccinos are more than that in Alice Springs, so they'll have to reset their record. But as we know, prices in that green line are kicking up. I'm not here to tell you where they're going to go in the future, but it has been sustained activity at high levels. And just briefly around the national herd, there's a couple of points to raise here. This is the size of the national beef herd, and you can see that the slaughter rates over recent years has brought the herd down to a fairly low level, probably a record for the last 20 years down to this level, with a projected increase as the herd rebuilds. And so that smaller number of cattle is also likely to restrain supply and keep prices close to where they are at least. And of course, live exports is always in the news. It's been a booming industry the last few years, and I think suffice to say it's one that we need to protect in every way we can, but certainly through ethical practices, and that's also a very big aspect. But the really important point, and I'll move on from markets and prices in a moment, is around the drivers of the international markets that have been built. And although this is a talk about research, MLA marketing has had a huge impact on building those markets and sustaining them. And so you can see the size of those. They are a predominant part of the industry, and they are a huge driver in those prices. So that's a plug for the marketing arm of MLA. They have had marvellous success in meeting those targets. And the final comment is, if you look at the price of beef in other parts of the world, particularly the yellow line around Brazil, they are looming as international competitors of ours in the international beef sales. And so the international market will have a few more twists in it before we get to the end of this. So look, there we are on prices. I'm around for the rest of the morning as well, and morning tea and lunch, so really happy to talk about anything I can tell you about. Okay, moving on to what I really came here to talk about, and I've just got a list of topics that I want to go through. The main emphasis here is really talking about some of our direction in research that's been reset in the last year or two, and then talk about adoption, research, and then the really important subject of how we get research and those findings out into producers' hands. So I do a lot of talks to producers. This is the obligatory MLA slide, and it is important to understand that MLA is a service provider to the industry, and you can read the comments there, and they're on the website as well, of course. Research, development and marketing is the major role. We work with government, we work with producers, we work with other investors to advance the industry, and clearly global competitiveness is a very important part of what we do. And just at the bottom, producer-owned, not-for-profit, and it's not representing the industry politically, and so we have a very clear role and report to that. So the structure of the industry, just to underline those comments, is MLAs here on the side. The overarching group is the Red Meat Advisory Council at the top of this chart, and then the peak industry councils running across. And so the peak industry councils are representing various aspects of the red meat industry, cattle, feedlotting, goats, sheep, and live export. They then have AMPC and Live Corp as components of them. But MLA largely works within the peak councils across beef, sheep and goats. And so that's how we interact, working our way up to the Red Meat Advisory Council. And that's important because a number of you will have seen the MISP 2020, Meat Industry Strategic Plan 2020, produced by the Red Meat Advisory Council, and there are probably a few people in the room who had input into that document. I'm going to show you a tiny bit of data from that and some of its descriptions in a moment, but it's been a very important step in setting the direction for research within the industry on a very sound economic basis. The other document that has been important and that was produced September last year. The other document that's been particularly important is this performance review, this one here. It came out earlier this year, and what it does is it evaluates money spent on research to outcomes that have accrued to the industry. The overall figure for that has come out at a number of 6.2, and what that means is for every dollar spent, the estimated benefit to the industry has been $6.2, which is a remarkable result, and of course it varies across the portfolios. But nevertheless, it's a demonstration that money has been, there is good return on the money spent, and clearly that's a continuing aspiration to get those returns. And those things have led on to a strategic plan which was released, it doesn't have a date on it, but it would be last month, and that's directing how we conduct our research particularly, but also around marketing for the next year and then leading on. So we have strong guidance about what is driving our research. So just a couple of snapshots around the sorts of return that R&D has given to levy payers, so that the sorts of things that have come out of this. And you'll see a few Wagga-centric and Riverina-centric projects here. So somewhere we've got Evergraze is there, Michael, you'd be pleased to know. But look, some issues around MSA, Meat Standards Australia, where the estimated return is put there at $213 million. Look, you can read those for yourself, but you can see there across a number of areas: genetics, grazing, there's a northern beef column, and also the final column is an interesting one, and you'll see that we've moved from dollar values to values that are perhaps less measurable in dollar terms, but vitally important for the industry around sustainability of environment and also animal welfare. So there is a bit of a look backwards at things that have been done in the past and are now accruing value to the industry. I'm sorry about the slide, but the 2020 plan, so this is not 2020 vision necessarily, although it's a nice coincidence of terms, but for the year 2020 is to look at the pillars that are important for and will be measured against for where the industry is going. And so this is an industry plan, and clearly MLA has a role in many aspects of this plan. So the two parts that I want to pick out particularly, I'm in the on-farm innovation and adoption team, and so this is going to be very on-farm focused, and I expect that's what the audience is after. But the two that I'm looking at is, the first one is called consumer and community support. So this is underpinning support for continued consumption of red meat. And number 4, which is productivity and profitability. So we can quickly mention the others: market growth and diversification, supply chain efficiency and integrity, and the ones at the bottom are, enablers around leadership, collaborative culture, and the last one, stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement is a part of what we're doing today as well, and so although I haven't highlighted it, it's actually something that we are doing more and more regularly, and I think is playing an important role. I mentioned that the MISP was based on an economic analysis, and this is a chart straight out of the document, and what it tells us is that in areas such as productivity, in other words, output of beef per input per input, you can see that there is a projected positive benefit of investment of around $2 billion in that process up to 2020. And I think that's how a lot of people look at economic benefits. You invest and you get a return. However, the important part of this document is in areas such as consumer and community support. What it's looked at is the possible negative impact of not doing something in this space. So the estimations here are that somewhere around a $4 billion negative impact may accrue if we don't address environmental and animal welfare issues, as two examples. And so that has become, these two issues, the negative and the positive, have become drivers in deciding the importance and evaluating what research we do. It's a really important shift. I joined the company just after this document was released, and I've got to say it really clarifies the direction of where the industry's got to go. So we're clearly looked at that very seriously. So just to flip through the bits of this, and I'll move on from this topic in a moment, but continuous improvement of animal welfare. This is something that I'm sure many of the room understand the huge importance of. Emergency disease. These are some of the endemic disease, which is diseases that occur. I guess we have emergency diseases include exotic disease. These are actually two really huge issues. And you can see that it moves on to talk about environmental sustainability, adapting to climate. So that is the first pillar. On-farm has activity in this area clearly, and I'll come back to some of those. The other area, which is the one that I largely work in, is around productivity and profitability. It has two parts. The first is around financial management of businesses, which is considered to be one of the areas that big change can occur. And so you can see that that really is around getting tools out and improving businesses. And the other one, which is focused on southern beef, here I'll just highlight for you, is this one here, which puts numbers on what we should expect in terms of increased productivity. 1.75% by 2020 and 7% by 2030. I know it sounds very prescriptive, but we have some goals that we are expecting to meet through the sort of research, development and adoption that we're doing. So that's what we live by, and I'll now move on and talk about how we then fund that within within MLA's gift, as it were, of the money that it uses. I don't mean gift in that term, if you get what I mean. Okay, so how does the money work? And look, this is really a snapshot. I didn't have time to change the cattle picture, I'm sorry, so these have got humps and big ears, but I think you'll get the story. I do have some Herefords later, and I'm sorry I didn't catch any Angus. Okay, so levies. Levies, are matched. Levies are collected by the government, as you're aware, and they are matched by Commonwealth dollars. In real terms, they've been declining for quite some time in that the number has been fixed, but the value has been falling. Nevertheless, levies form a large part of the money stream that comes into MLA and is spent on research. The MLA donor company, and the chair of the board's in the audience, so I hope I get this right, Lucinda. But so this is the additional money that comes from the government in terms of their contribution, and in a very wise move. Someone had a really good idea a few years ago of putting that up as a source of matching funds for other investors. So what this has done is opened up research to other investors across the industry. And we'll return to the donor company in a minute. Barnaby Joyce launched the Rural R&D for Profit and Innovation, etc. a couple of years ago. MLA has been highly successful in landing a number of those projects. There's one involves CSU, which is around the foot and mouth disease vaccine project. There's others in a number of areas in feed base, but those projects are now starting to have some traction. CRCs, I'm sure you're all aware, the beef CRCs. There's a developing Northern Australian CRC just kicked off as well, and so they have an impact on research. And I mentioned leverage possibilities down the track as well. One of the interesting things about research is in the old days, I guess people looked at good ideas and then formulated those into research questions. What's happening now is that we really have so many different sources of funds, we're not quite sure what will fund what. And so a lot of my job is really about finding the best ideas, putting them forward to various agencies so that a lot of the funding is not putting pressure on the levy funds. And when you look at the balance, there's a large amount of research being funded through MLA without putting pressure on the levy funds. And that's a great thing because I think we're really doing some excellent research. However, two important things around the levy area that have occurred in the last year. The first is the annual call, and that is a shift in the way research funding works within MLA. And the second is around strategic partnerships. So there's been a couple of strategic partnerships, either fairly advanced in the process. So these are bringing in co-investors through businesses or universities or other research agencies. One in genetics, and that extends a lot of the work of the CRC, and also sheep genetics, of course, and animal welfare, which is one of those, one of the important pillars, but it's one of those downward pillars that I showed you earlier. So there are new directions. They are enabling us to do producer active research or research that producers have input into charting direction, but at the same time through strategic partnerships looking at longer term issues for the industry. So I'll just quickly move through the allocation. So as you know, the levy is $5 and the research allocation for that is 92 cents, which is then matched dollar for dollar for the levy. And this is just a snapshot of how that levy was split across research a couple of financial years ago, because that's the last year we have full data for. And you can see that there's a split, and the one that I'm most interested in is this one here around increasing across the supply chain. So this is a different arrangement, but you can see these are the amounts of money. Now I've just put a little comment down the bottom. The total investment around this area of research in previous years has been around 60 million. That has had some other areas added to it, and we've just got some estimates of how money might work over the next few years around levies. The Processing Council also provides some input through mechanisms into some of this research. So we're not the only player and the only collector of research money. The MLA donor company has funds to invest, often always through matching, and I've just been I put some possible other external contributions. What it's saying is that there is a healthy amount of money for research in the area in the next few years, particularly on the back of increasing cattle prices and sheep prices for that matter, and that this is a pretty exciting opportunity to really invest wisely in research and development across the red meat industry. I mentioned the producer input and the consultation strategy, and so I want to talk a little bit about that now, because everybody in the room should have the opportunity to have input into what research will be done through our levy funds. So there are three regional groups, the Northern, Western and Southern committees. Clearly we're in the middle of SAMRAC, and for those people who haven't figured out where we are, it's where the red arrow is. That little dot's Wagga. But this is the Southern New South Wales Regional Research Committee. And it's run, it meets in Wagga as it happens, and they have an input into SAMRAC, which is the Southern Australian Meat Research Committee. So that's how this area fits into and feeds information up into the system that we have. The way that's worked, and this is one cycle, has just been completed or just about to be completed, but this is how this cycle of project calls and priorities has been conducted. So we start off, we're actually pretty much at the yellow spot again, and over the last few weeks the Northern committees have been meeting. I think the Southern New South Wales Committee meets reasonably soon, someone was telling me, and they are the opportunities to then prioritise research needs for the region. So that data will be collected quite soon. But let's just go back to where we were a year ago. So a year ago, that data was collected and put together. It was put to the red meat panel, which is made up of those various groups plus MLA and input from Cattle Council. And then that went out as terms of reference. People, including people in the room here, put in preliminary applications up in that green box. They've come through a cycle of evaluation, and you'll see the grey box on the right, all the chairs of the panel. So Gus Hobson from here will be on that group, and they will be ranking those projects on the basis of producer relevance and ability to be adopted. Then we go through further applications, expert panel which has been formed specially for this. Red meat panel met just a couple of weeks ago to look at the final projects. And so just to give you a feeling for how the numbers work, we got 185 applications across the 9 areas of interest that were set by the red meat panel. They were filtered at various points around the cycle, and ultimately we're looking like funding something like 18 of those projects. And that announcement will happen soon. It's just we're waiting for some final ratification, and then we will start the next cycle of that. So really, that's the way it's operating. First time around the cycle. I've been involved in research and project evaluation for most of my professional life, and this system has worked amazingly well, irrespective of it being the first time through. I think we've got very close to a good system. So just as an example, the sort of priorities that came up last time, these are broad areas down the left. I didn't want to put too much confusion in, but you can see that the Southern Committee, SAMRAC, rated as its number 1 research in this pasture growth legumes adoption area. Now that's very broad, I know, but just to sort of give you a snapshot. You can see that the Southern Committee has its various rankings. Business management was number 4. Animal welfare, mortality, pain relief, community engagement, number 5. So you can see how across the 3 committees, North, South and West, those various areas were then rated and ranked and massaged to ultimately create a list of priorities. So just to reiterate the comment I made that you all have a chance to have input into this process, this is a new opportunity, and here's just a call to arms. Get informed, have a look at the MISP, this Meat Industry Strategic Plan, and understand where it's heading. Come to events like this. So I've given you all a little gold star there for turning up today. Well done. Electronic communication is is going to be the future of a lot of what we do around a whole lot of areas. So I've got that there. And I know we're not there yet in rural areas, but it's going to come. Talk to the chair and the group, engage with the local committee here, identify goals, provide arguments. So really figure out what would be important for your enterprise. And there are some regional issues that we need to make sure come through this process. We don't want it diluted by 18 committees. There are some important local issues, and we want to make sure we address those. Okay, so I'm going to move on, just touch on some research and development. There's quite a few slides. I try to be fair to everybody, and I also tried to throw in slides that were run out of DPI or CSU, because there's a bit of local interest in those. As I was in the school, came back to the school yesterday after quite a while away, it's great just to recognise how many bits of MLA work is going on around Wagga, and so certainly there is good research going on, particularly in the institutions within a couple of 100 metres of us. So I just want to touch on some of these areas around feed base, some of the methane mitigation work, which I think is particularly important, a little bit of productivity work, touch on health and welfare, and also just a little bit about some of the other future work that's going on. 10. Oh, well, we won't do weeds. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, we'll move on. Okay. Weeds, clearly important. I will go through this pretty quickly. So pest animals, huge issue, cattle and sheep industry, and there's been some, I think you'd have to say, breakthroughs in that in the last few years. Participatory R&D, a really big issue for the industry, where producer-to-producer information is particularly important in getting a message out, getting the story out. There are a number, and particularly in Southern Australia, of participatory groups, and there's just a breakdown of what's going on. Some of you, I expect, are involved in some of these PDSs and other research groups across the country, particularly in the south at this time. Annual legumes, and clearly this has been there's been local input into some of this work as well. Legumes clearly provide advantages in nutrition, and there are a number of examples there, a continuing area of research. I've emphasised feed base in this talk because that is a particularly important aspect of what's going on. The methane mitigation work, this is really just to highlight a lot of work that went on through the national program to really tease out the issues around methane. And what this chart tells you is the sorts of work that can now be done through that analysis to turn the loss of methane into productivity. So methane is a loss of energy. If that can be turned into growth, then we've got a double win situation. And so what this does is summarise the sorts of work that will now be directed to solve some of those issues. One of those is adding this sea algae into feed, and these experiments in sheep have shown that by feeding different portions of this algal preparation in diets, that greenhouse gas, or particularly methane production, can be significantly reduced. And so that has application in particular environments. A big area that we're working on now, particularly across objective measures of animals, live animals moving onto carcasses. The on-farm aspect of this is the front end of that is this thing called beef specs. It's been developed by DPI in Armidale and co-investment with MLA. And this is really an important part of the future in terms of growing animals, or particularly beef cattle, for markets and particular market grids. And so this is a major push to improve the value of carcasses. It works in a 3D camera arrangement, where the morphology of the animal is used as a predictor of yield, weight, and a P8 fat, which is a carcass quality measure, I guess. Moving on to welfare, and I've just got one here, and this is an example of some research that's now been translated out into a practical tool. This is the glove box guide to long distance transport for the first time, it's been underpinned by scientific evidence about what is appropriate. Climate prediction. MLA, as you see there, has been investing in this, in improving prediction of weather. That doesn't mean whether it's going to rain tomorrow. That's not what I mean. It's these longer term predictions to assist decision making on farm. And another important development is around using satellite images. This technology has been taken up in a pretty big way in the north of the country. And what it allows producers to do quite readily is to get a map of their property, add infrastructure, so the orange bits are fence lines, and then mark watering points, and then look at pasture use within various radii of watering points. And what most people are discovering is half of their farms never grazed. And by making small changes to infrastructure, they can make very big changes to their productivity, but also their day-to-day management by understanding what things look like. Just can't finish research without talking about some of the big wins, and one of those has been Meat Standards Australia. Have a look at their website and just have a look at the benefits that's accrued to the industry through increased value, but not just to producers in increased value, but the whole reputation and underpinning of quality of the meat products in beef, and work on standardising sheep is underway as well. On to adoption. Look, this is perhaps the most important thing that we need to now deliver on research, and it's one of our biggest challenges. And this is widely held. What are the challenges that we have with adoption? And that is, the first is convincing people that it needs to happen, and for many people, they may be very happy with what they're doing. But there are some significant challenges in creating change, and not the least of those is having a value proposition for that change. And everybody's running a business, and so that is a very good measure to understand whether you want to change practice. And a little comment at the bottom there just saying research to adoption is a long process, and we're aware of that, but we're trying to really focus on that and look at the benefit of our research to adoption. The other thing then we're trying to do is to really get a bit of an understanding of how adoption leads through a process. And so what I've got here is a scheme of just saying, how do we get from awareness of what's going on, which is the sort of thing we're doing today down here in forums, to actually practice change. And by practice change, I've got there things such as, the bottom line, which the dollar bottom line, those social bottom lines, and also compliance issues at the end of this process. So that the dollar sign, the smiley face and the tick are those. And so how do we do that? And you can just see a bit of a progression. So let's just say somebody in the room has been here today and thinks, boy, I really want to learn some more about some particular aspect of my business. These are the sorts of things that we build. And there are a number of activities around here. A number of those will be run by providers in the region, and you know who they are. Then the next step is to say this EDGE program is one of our leading programs. It's actually gone beyond theory now, but we have Business Edge Nutrition and Breeding, and John, I think I saw walk into the room. So Business Edge is now being launched in Southern Australia. So that is the next step that a producer may take in saying, I want to actually learn some information to have an impact on my business. PGS is a new profitable grazing systems, is in a pilot stage at MLA at the moment, and that is really at the next stage of supported learning. And I've just got the catchphrase there as whole farm management, so it's really putting all those things together to make an impact. And I've just got a bit of a crystal ball gazing. This is the sort of things where we might be by 2030, if you'll indulge me for a moment. Don't quote me on this, but let's just talk about the sorts of things that may be delivered. All of these things we're working on, people are working on. Satellite maps, animal remote sensing. We're going to get some information about that today from Scott Norman. Objective measures to meet market specifications. That's very likely to come. Value-based pricing is something that's been kicked around. In other words, producer will get the benefit for producing superior carcasses. Tropical legumes, I got the wrong part of the country, but you get the point. Compliance in welfare standards. Welfare is perhaps our biggest issue in terms of practice and communication. Genomic trades at bull purchase. Look, I know a lot of you do that already, but it's not common across the whole industry. And I just put in the bottom, freedom from exotic disease. Things that don't happen are important here as well. And I think we're investing heavily in that area through a rural R&D for profit to make sure that happens. This is a slide that was given to me, and I'm not quite sure what it says. It says it's an extremely important part of what MLA does in communicating and understanding producers. And that, I think, read the bottom paragraph there, which says, we aim to be the go-to organisation for consumer insights, market information, R&D reporting, driving demand for red meat through thought leadership. I've added industry digital strategy, so the Managing Director announced that a couple of weeks ago. So this is an area of looking at how do we collect and use data appropriately across the industry. So that's my last comment. I think I'm done. Thanks, John.